from the County Assembly of Busia.
Okay, I see the delegation is slightly different from the one that was here when we were considering the County Assembly. I hope it's to ensure that there's breadth in terms of exposure. Okay, you are welcome. We shall be referring to you as we proceed. The Governor, Busia County, please go on record.
Thank you, Chair. This is Dr. Paul Otuoma, Governor of Busia. Allow me, Chair, maybe my delegations also to introduce themselves.
Yeah, just quickly name and designation.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Topista Wanyama. I'm the CEC member, County Treasury and Economic Planning. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. My name is CPA Gibson Wafula, Chief Officer in charge of County Treasury.
Good morning, Chair, honorable members. My name is CS John Oscar Juma, Deputy County Secretary, Busia, and also Acting County Secretary. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, honorable Chair. My name is Omboko Innocent, County Attorney.
Yeah, let's get the entire delegation on record.
Good morning, Chair. Mohammed Noor, I'm the political advisor to the Governor.
Morning, Chair. I'm Vincent Mutanda, the Chief of Staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Elijah Mwaro, Chief Officer, Trade, Industry and Cooperatives.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members of the Senate. My name is Ahmed Adinifo, Chief Officer in charge of Roads and Public Works. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Ongoma Kucho, Advisor on Legal Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Engineer Andrew Meso is my name. I'm the CEC in charge of water, environment, irrigation, climate change, and energy.
Morning, Chair. My name is Oscar Ubunyo, Director, Governance Press Unit.
Thank you, Chair. I'm CPA Evans Wandera Wangata, the Director Budget.
Honorable Chair, my name is CPA CS Roslyn Lumbasi. I'm the Director Accounting Services. Thank you.
Morning, Chair. I'm CPA Maximila Ayoko, Director Internal Audit.
Morning, Chair. I'm Evans Namai, Accountant, Finance, Busia County.
Morning, Chair. I'm Alexander Omolo Jumbo, Protocol of the Governor.
I believe everyone has been introduced, and
there is a lady who has not introduced herself.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Margaret Wanyama, the PA to Governor.
okay. Those who have not been introduced must be members of the media, the Fourth Estate. You are welcome. Our next order is to adopt the agenda. Our agenda is as stated in the pack before us. We have already done the brief, and now we are going straight to agenda number 5 on meeting with the County Executive of Busia. Could I get a proposal from the members?
Yeah, Chair, propose.
Thank you, Senator Mario Mumar.
Chair, I will second.
Thank you, Senator Onyonka. The next order is administration of oath. The clerk shall guide the governor in that.
I, Dr. Paul Otuoma Nyongesa, do solemnly swear that the evidence that I shall give before this committee in respect to matters before the committee shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Next will be your tabling of your management responses.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, sir, I hereby table the following documents before the committee. the management responses and accompanying annexures for the county executive of Busia for the financial year 2020-2021 and 2021-2022.
Auditor General, I believe that what is before us was shared in advance. Could you confirm that you have been able to review?
Thank you, Chair. What is before us was presented to us on 7th March 2024. We have reviewed the evidence and the submission, the response, and we've had engagement with the management, Chair. So we are ready to proceed.
Okay. Clerk of the Senate, can you confirm that the timelines are there too?
Yes, Chair, I do confirm that we received the responses on time.
Okay, that's great. It's an improvement from the last time where we could not agree because of technicalities. Senator Onyonka.
Honorable Otuoma, you know I was in Parliament with you when you were fighting for the gender issue. You've just brought 2 women and you have 19 men. You are disappointing me.
Governor,
remembering that you are on oath.
Thank you, Chair. I think in Busia we adhere to that 1/3 gender rule. It just happened today that some of the staff that were around may not have balanced the gender in terms of being here, because some were already here in Nairobi. But we adhere to that as a county. Thank you.
I think it's not an idle suggestion. Just make sure that your delegation is reflective of what the Constitution requires. Yeah. And is there any other preliminary observation?
Chair, I just want to find out how many ladies do you have as CEC and chief officers?
Chair, I think we have adhered to the Constitution. We have the CC Finance, we have CC Education, we have CC Public Service, in terms of the CCs.
3 against?
Against 7. Against, okay, a ratio of 3 to 7.
Okay. You have tried anyway.
Yeah, let's just make sure that what we see here then becomes the face of Busia in terms of ratios. If we don't have any other preliminary observation, we would go to the report of the Auditor General. But I think there's a matter that was raised during our brief, which I think as a chair I would be reckless if I don't deal with it. The signatory to the responses that are before us is the acting county secretary. Governor, you may want to let us know why these responses have been signed by the acting county secretary and not a substantive county secretary.
Thank you, Chair. The substantive county secretary, we still have got some issues. Some are medical, some are basically just that's why he's not in office. Some may go beyond being medical, but for the time.
So there's a county secretary.
Yes.
A substantive county secretary.
Yes. That's why he's acting. There is.
So if he's acting, so it means he's out on suspension, out on leave.
No, he's not on suspension, Chair. He had an accident, but beyond the accident, the way I say, there are a few other issues that need to be resolved. But he's around. But he's invalid as we speak today.
But the county secretary was approved by the assembly, is properly in office.
Chair, that's why I said I may not be able to answer that now, because that's the county secretary I found there. So those other details, as I said, can be canvassed maybe in another time.
No, it's a matter that was substantive in our earlier brief.
Yes.
In fact, it's a significant matter,
yes,
because the question was who are the officers with fiduciary responsibility within the county executive.
Yes.
And so the issue of an acting county secretary came up. We didn't have the information that you are profiling.
Yes.
I believe the gentleman seated to your right,
yes,
introduced himself as a deputy county secretary.
And acting county secretary.
Acting while the other while the substantive office holder is invalid.
Yes.
So that's the explanation.
That's the explanation.
It's not that he's pending approval by the assembly.
No.
Okay. Senator Dulo?
Chair, I think it is good the governor makes it clear, because he said he has medical issue and then other issues. Is it necessary, or maybe at this stage, to bring it to the attention of the senators? What are those other issues? And number two, why is he not in the office? If he's not on suspension, interdiction, or sick leave, how is he absent? The deputy is acting.
Chair, he had a terrible accident. I had a meeting with him the other day. He's still on crutches. And as I said, through that accident, which is basically now medical issues, are a bit of personal confidential issues. That's why I say that maybe currently he's not able to be in office, but in addition to that, we were also still having some consultations.
So I think, Chair, then the position should be he's officially on either sick leave.
But he's not on suspension, Chair. It's just on medical.
Okay. Senator Nyonka?
Could I make a, I'm sorry, Chair, could I make a suggestion there that it looks like what the governor is not saying, we can discuss it in camera. For the simple reason, I think I'm trying to realize that there could be privacy issues about this case. So I would really request that we allow him. He gives us the information in camera before we wind up the hearings today.
I don't see it as a breach of confidentiality, because it's extremely important. Whoever signs these reports, it's an important consideration. Assuming it was signed by the Clerk of Works, Busia County, is it acceptable? Definitely not, because it does not bear a fiduciary responsibility. And ideally, we have just made a resolution that we are going to do a guidebook to county governments on how to package their responses to the Senate, on who takes ownership of the responses to the Senate. It's easy to argue that a county secretary is the one who signs correspondences on behalf of a county. But when it comes to financial matters, there are the persons with fiduciary responsibility. And they are defined in the financial statements. They are listed there. CEC Finance, Chief Officer Finance. The county secretary is not listed as an officer with fiduciary responsibility. So when we saw the acting county secretary signing, we must dispel any notion that there is mischief without going into the conditions of the office holder. So we are not breaching any confidentiality, but satisfying ourselves that there is no mischief by having the acting county secretary sign on behalf of the county government.
Much guided, Chair.
Senator Mariam Omar.
Chair, on that line, for how long will be acting as a county secretary?
That's why I say these are matters that I say there could be other issues, because just like the question you have posed, for how long can we be in this kind of situation? And as you say, we will be guided if there are this kind of thing, because some things are beyond, as a medical condition is beyond what you can do sometimes.
Senator Mariam?
Chair, I'm asking because of acting supposed to be within the 6 months. Now, on the medical ground, that person can maybe out of office for the next 2 years or 3 years to come. So it cannot be, somebody cannot act the position for more than 6 months.
So I think we are dealing with, if indeed it's true, it's invalidity, and Governor, you're on oath. So what you say orally, we take it to be true, as per the oath you have taken. If it's invalidity, and if the gentleman is already in the establishment as a deputy county secretary, is that a substantive appointment?
Yes.
Yeah, so if it's invalidity, then it's a different case, as opposed to when you have someone facing charges or when you have a vacancy. So it appears that there's no vacancy. There's an office holder who is invalid, or who is not is out on medical grounds. So that might change our perspective on the duration for which a person can act. But I want to hear from the Senator for Busia before we dispense with this.
Yeah, Chair and Your Excellency, what I know is that as Senator Miriam has said, acting capacity is only allowed to a maximum of, it's supposed to be really 3 months, renewable ones, giving a maximum of 6 months. So what we'll be expecting in that condition might be for His Excellency to take out an evaluation of the substantive office holder and whether he's able to resume work or not, because there's also retirement on medical grounds, unfortunately so that the public office cannot be hamstrung by the condition of an individual. So the governor might consider those kind of provisions so that we get a substantive office holder in this very, very critical, because the county secretary is your mouthpiece, then who communicates. So you need to, because I think you've been acting from December.
I appointed him in January to act in that position.
In January?
Yeah. You remember, Chair, when we were here, we had somebody else also still acting in that position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it means that, and again, the next 6 months, you might be appointing somebody by June. So we may need to have a proper evaluation of the substantive office holder and see whether there is somebody who can resume work, or if we cannot resume work, then unfortunately we may be forced to go the route of retiring on medical grounds. But as the chair says, it's a critical issue. But I think in this occasion, the chair will be lenient enough to allow us to continue.
Yeah, I think we could proceed, having listened to that background, because what we need to satisfy ourselves that there is no mischief in that signatory. But take guidance as offered by the committee to avoid having these conversations in future. I think it's just important to get things done the right way. For the county secretary, we wish him well, quick recovery, irrespective of the circumstances, so that he can continue rendering his public duties. We have dispensed with that matter. We can now go straight to the report of the Auditor General. We have 2 financial years, so we'll start with the latest financial year, which is 2021-2022. We have already received a brief from the Auditor General. We have also received a brief from the Parliamentary Budget Office. There are some issues that we've been appraised on, and we've been told they've been resolved. I think where there is no contention, we'll just mark them and take the written responses. But where there is partial resolution, we will have to go into the issues in detail. So starting with the 2021-2022 Auditor General, give us your opinion and then take us through the basis of that opinion.
Thank you, Chair. A report of the Auditor General on the County Executive of Busia for the year ended 30th June 2022. Chair, this audit attracted a qualified opinion. And Chair, the issues that gave rise to the opinion of variances in financial statements, still variances in financial statements up to number 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. Chair, number 2 is on unsupported expenditure.
Okay, maybe let's just go through each issue, issue by issue.
Yes.
Let's start from accuracy of the financial statements. And maybe even though you had marked 1.1 as resolved,
yes,
I just want us to look at it, because how it is resolved will determine how we deal with the other issues that come after it. So read your finding on 1.1.
1.1, Chair, is variances between statement of receipt and payment and supporting schedules. It reads, Chair, the statement of receipt and payments reflects amounts under components which were at variance with the corresponding amount shown in supporting schedules as shown below. Chair, there is a table with 5 components, where the figures, first column is figures in the financial statements, the next column is figures in supporting schedules, and the last column, Chair, is on the variances. that we are noted between the two columns. The net effect share is 768,783,426. Thank you, Chair.
Now, since we had already looked at a brief and, had a glance at the management response, the Governor, you agree with the finding of the Auditor General? Yes. As at the time of audit? Yes. That as at the time of audit, 768 million could not be supported. But then it has now been supported. So the question is, what magic was that? What magic did you apply to support the 768 million when it was not possible at the time of audit?
Chair, I think I was going to ask my CC Finance to be responding on my behalf, and I'll interject when there are issues that I can do. If
We'll allow her to respond.
Yes.
But we'll still come back to that question.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Management response. A, exchequer releases. It is true the amount on the financial statements for exchequer releases was Kenya shillings 6,843,285,237. However, schedules amounting to Kenya shillings 6,482,491,132 were availed to the auditors, leaving a balance of Kenya shillings 360,790,105, which were later availed for verification. Thus, the amount in the supporting schedules tally with the amount reflected in the financial statements. When you look at Appendix 1A, is the extract of financial statements, page 26, showing the total exchequer releases for the financial year 2021-2022, supporting schedules and extract of bank statement. B, other receipts. The management hereby clarifies that the variances of Kenya shillings 527,289 was unspent amount for financial year 2020-2021 returned to CRF account recognized as part of other receipts. Appendix 1B is the extract of bank statement showing refund of unspent funds at the end of the financial year. Appendix 1C is extract of other receipts for financial year 2021-2022 showing inclusion of unspent amount returned to CRF. And we go to E, other grants and payments dash Kenya Climate Smart Support. It is true the amount on the financial statements for other grants and payments was Kenya shillings 159,943,544. However, schedules amounting to Kenya shillings 62,245,960 were availed to auditors, leaving a balance of Kenya shillings 97,697,584, which were later availed for verification. Thus, the amount in supporting schedules tally with amount reflected in financial statements. Appendix 1D is schedules of other grants and payments amounting to Kenya shillings 159,943,544. D, use of goods and services, other operating expenses. It is true the amount on the financial statements for other operating expenses was Kenya shillings 570,897,952, which comprised various sub-items under that vote head. However, the supporting schedules at the time of audit of Kenya shillings 279,855,056 were part payments made under sub-items in that vote head, excluding amount of 291,042,896. that resulted to the variances which have since been availed for verification. And that can be seen in Appendix 1E, which is schedule of other operating expenses amounting to Kenya shillings 570,897,952. Then we go to E, other payments. It is true the amount on the financial statements for other payment was Kenya shillings 774,694,873. However, schedules amounting to Kenya shillings 755,973,321 were availed to the auditor at the time of audit. The balance of Kenya shillings 18,721,552 was later availed for verification. Thus, the supporting schedules tally with the amount reflected in the financial statements. It's in Appendix F of schedule of other payment amounting to Kenya shillings 774,694,873.
Auditor General, what is your take on that explanation?
Thank you, Chair. We have gone through the schedules and confirmed them against supporting documents, underlying documents. The issue, Chair, here is late submission of supporting documents, which if we go through almost 1/4 of this report, that is the trend that was existing at that time. So
yeah, and then I think that's why we get back to the question.
Yes, Chair.
Because what your CC has read essentially agrees with the observation of the Auditor General. And the theme that cuts across all the responses, that they were later availed for verification. And yet audit is not a one-day thing. It is not an event, it's a process. So what magic is this that produced the records later and could not produce them at the time of audit?
Thank you, Chair, because that's also a question I kept on asking my team, that this thing is not a one-off thing. You are given opportunity to avail records and you are not availed. But it also came to my attention that there was no proper system of keeping some of these records. And you will find on financial matters, when you see that kind of thing, you know your first issue is your antennas are up. And so the most important thing now is to say we must have a proper system of keeping these records, because these records is about money. And this is one thing that we found, you know, a big problem that we're trying now to correct, because if the auditor asks you at that time, why are you not availing? Where are you going to get it? Those are the questions that we have been asking. Why didn't you avail? You are given you know, opportunity to either avail them even if they have been there. But it seems in this case, Chair, it did not happen. And we are trying now to put a records management system in place so that everything is real time when it is required. But unfortunately, that was the situation.
So the governor is as baffled as the chair. So we don't seem to be getting answers. Senator Dulo?
Chair, I think what I wanted to ask are partly answered by the governor. And since he has said he has put the structures in place to make sure that there is accountability in future as far as documents are concerned, hoping that that is the position, then I think in future maybe a similar situation should not arise. Because a layperson can say that if the documents were not found at the time of audit and now they are availed, they can say they are cooked, you know. So I hope since he has put the structures in place, then we can go by that. I thank you.
Senator Nyonka?
Chair, my question goes to the AOG. After the presentation of the documents and your receipt of those documents, were you comfortable that what you received was actually genuine and they were verifiable and nobody can impute any motive or questions about them.
That is true, Chair, and that's why we said we are satisfied, because we could take the schedule, go back to the payment vouchers, and then those payment vouchers look at the supporting documents of those payment vouchers, so that at the end of the day, if there is one that we are not satisfied with, then we flag it out. And Chair, you may recall during our pre-briefing, there was the issue of 276 million that came up, and we said, although we have been given payment vouchers for 276, we have not been able to ascertain all of them, confirm all of them. We have gone to the extent of only 138 million. The rest, we could seek the indulgence of the committee so that we continue verifying them with time and slowly, so that we are not able to make a mistake. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Omtata.
Thank you, Chair. I would only want to point His Excellency to the fact that the absence of public records is a gross violation of the law, especially the Public Finance Act. You have Section 149, Clause 1 and Clause 2, paragraphs B and C. And if you look at the regulations, the management regulations, Regulation 102 and 117, Clause 3, of the Public Finance Management Regulations, National Government 2015, you find that there's a mandatory requirement on the officer handling documents to preserve them. And if you look at in this situation, we are not talking about peanuts. We are talking of millions of shillings in hundreds or in tens of millions. I would request Your Excellency, if you go, when you go back home, try to identify who was the officer responsible for these documents and take administrative action. Because if you don't do that, this mischief will continue. Because it really baffles me where I sit. I cannot accept that these documents are genuine. By the stretch of the imagination, these are about 4 years back. Then you now pop up a document after somebody has looked for them and you say you are popping up in the 5th year. It looks a bit mischievous, but to let it go, I would request that you read the Riot Act to these people. The law provides that they must provide this, they must have safe custody of documents. And whoever was responsible for this document, if he's still on duty, then he needs to give you a very, very proper explanation as to why he hid the documents from the Auditor General. Because if they were there, then they were deliberately hidden. If they are not there, then there's no way they can exist now. So there's some mischief that has been played, and Your Excellency, I would request that you crack the whip on the individual so that we don't have to waste your time asking you about where ledgers are and what have you. So that's all, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Maybe just going back to the records before us, and Auditor General, if you look at Appendix 1F, schedule of other payments, because other payments is where clever accountants hide expenditure. But this schedule that we have, if you go to the second page, there's an entry of 3rd of June 2022. I think description is pre-feasibility, feasibility, and appraisal studies. Now, that pre-feasibility, feasibility, and appraisal studies runs on page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, page 11, page 12, page 13. So you've got 13 pages or 12 pages of pre-feasibility, feasibility, and appraisal studies. If you sum it up, it's in the tens of millions. So what is this? What is this feasibility and pre-feasibility, which has entries totaling to 12 pages, and if you are to do a rough sum, it would probably account for close to, it might get to 100 million. What is that? What is that? because each page perhaps has, is it 30 rows? So there are almost 300 entries just with that one description. What could those be?
Chair, just like you said, that puzzle, but here what I got is that a lot of this is what we call these ward-based projects that were being budgeted under this kind of vote by them. And I've had a problem with this myself. The way, you know, these ward-based programs, the ones which are proposed by the members of the, the MCAs, the honorable MCAs of the wards. So, because if you look, you know, under the normal budgeting processes, these things should be done in departments. But somehow, you know, we found that there was this kind of arrangements, which I've been struggling with, to say, yes, projects can be proposed, but let the implementing agency be the departments and you do the oversight role, because it becomes a problem. And these are some of the problems that we encountered there.
So Auditor General, you should also help us with that, because it's not just a matter of getting a schedule. You must also look at that schedule and figure out whether it makes sense. Is it a problem in their description? But if all these are truly feasibility and pre-feasibility studies, then there's a problem with this schedule. There's a problem with this as being support for the 774 million. Auditor, you told us that you looked at this, went back to the vouchers. Did this capture your attention?
Yes, it did, Chair. But the issue is that it was being budgeted at that time under yes. And then all the expenditure under that will fall under ward administrative, under directors of the wards.
But why are there other payments? Because if they are ward-based projects, there could be civil works, there could be public participation, there could be other operating costs. Why other payments, knowing the mischief that there is in that line?
Other payments. Yes. Actually, that's other operating expenses. Chair, that is what we were also raising, because it should belong to a specific project. That specific project should have its own description. But what has been happening is that they were lumping them together under other operating expenses. All the projects, and that's why we were getting a problem with management.
Senator Nyonka?
You know what, OAG, what you are saying, what I'm reading and taking from what you're saying, you seem to sound like even you don't actually know. Am I being fair to you?
We Chair, what we were saying is that it was the wrong description that time.
Thank you. So
This
what,
has now
stop right there.
Thank you.
So once you noticed it was the wrong one, what red flags did you raise?
One issue, Chair, we have advised the current administration to desist from lumping all this expenditure under other expenses. That we have done. So that yes.
Fred Abuga, it's not usually our nature to put you to task, because you are our partner in this. But I think that even this county deserves to benefit from your experience, expertise, and advisory. This schedule for other payments, this schedule, I don't know whether it's your team who prepared it or you found it. Because this schedule, those entries on feasibility studies, whatever explanation it might be, they fall short. They fall short of a proper financial management system. And so it is easy for you to say that now we have a schedule totaling to 774. But you should also be telling us, but out of that 774, there are 300 entries that are suspicious that maybe the committee should interrogate. And then that allows the governor also to be able to put his people on the spot. Because I think, Governor, during this time, you are not in the county. You are probably the privatization commission or somewhere. So perhaps your offense, if there was to be any, will be trying to cook the books. And that's what we need to be extremely careful about. So when I see a schedule like this, you know, it gives an impression that someone is trying to cook books, which you don't need to do because you are not the one in office. Governor.
Chair, the observations you're making are quite correct, and I really went through this thing, you know, when just like interrogating some of the questions that you are putting through. But as you put it, you know, this is just historical things that we were picking bits, because my question was that if this information is now available and the auditors had asked for it and it has taken us this long, are we sure, just the way you are saying, it raises your antennas? But then I was told, yes, we have submitted these documents, and I thought now it is the experts who can look through, tell us maybe this one we have verified, just like we are going through some issues with pending bills. You know, we have had to appoint committees, of course allowed by the Office of the Auditor General. So they have now to break down, because some places when they tell you that there is no record, to even verify. There's a date, but there's no record. So that's the situation we find ourselves in. And even for us, another bigger problem is where you sometimes go in and find money has been spent, but the projects are not usable, and you need to budget for them. Now, that brings a problem, because now how do you end and say, yes, public funds were used up to this extent, now we can go through the processes of making sure that we finish this project, because we have to finish some of those projects. If you look at them, they are really needed. But maybe the processes that we went through, you find there are no records. And for you to terminate even a contract and start another one, you must go through certain processes. So we are having a bit of those challenges. But even to me, this is helping me to reconstruct some of the decisions that we need to make. On like you go, a big culprit will be ECDs, waters, dispensary. You know, all these things we are calling ward-based programs, because you find after these sometimes they are not captured in the budgets. So it's only when you go there during public participation you hear, oh, you know, this thing was started, it was not completed, this kind of situation. But when the records are looked for the way, because I was asking that there was poor record management system, the things are picked from here and there. And as you put it, sometimes it can bring an issue. But once they are submitted, you expect they will be verified, then you'll be told this has satisfied us. Maybe this one you need to look a bit further. That's the way normally I take it. Because as you put it, I mean, you're talking of almost 3-4 years ago. So you can only get what is there, because governments are perpetual.
Yeah, 3-4 years ago, 768 million later. Senator Mtata.
Yes, I think His Excellency just touched on a point I wanted to make, to ask the Auditor General. Did you trace this entries back to the budget? And if you look at the budgets of Busia County, including the current ones, there's a lot of other expenses. Have you looked at them to try and see whether this habit has changed or whether the habit is still continuing? Because from where I sit, this bad habit of others, and you find sometimes that the other expenses carry the bulk of the money in a department. So I don't know if you looked at the budgets of the time to trace these other expenses and maybe did a fraud audit to see if these things really have a pointer to this particular expense having been done fraudulently.
Could we get the Auditor General to respond, and then we come back to Senator Nyoka?
Thank you, Chair. We went to the budget, and the item of other operating expenses was budgeted for. What, Chair, we did not do is a forensic fraud audit That we did not carry out, Chair.
Just to add on that, sorry, Chair. When you found the entry for other, and you are auditing this thing for lawfulness, and you know that in budget making, you must attach an expenditure to a service or a good. Don't you think at that point you should raise issues? Because I've noticed that the budgets for Busia, for the current government, have a lot of other things entered there, and they carry a lot of money. And when you're doing audit, I would expect you to declare that as an unlawful expenditure and not allow somebody to get away with that. Because if we don't tie budgets to programs or to specific procurements, then you'll not be able to know what is being done to the public money that is entrusted to fiduciary holders. So don't you think if you recover this was under budget as other, don't you think at that point you should have made a declaration that you have encountered an illegality?
Maybe let's get the Auditor General's response first. Well, I think that's been put to you. I think the critical thing, if you look at that other payments, it's 11% of equitable share. So that should be alarming. Having one entry called other payments with that percentage. I think that might even be almost the equivalent of what was transmitted to the Assembly. So we have a problem, and maybe this is going forward for you and your team, but for the Auditor General, they have a responsibility to point these out for past events, that any payment in the county government, it has to relate to something. And the chart of accounts that have been provided by the National Treasury has got sufficient granularity for you to be able to capture your payments either as a service or as a good or as a compensation to employees, so that if you're going to use that line of other payments, it should not be as material as 11%. And that's why you see even this schedule, it baffles you the same way it baffles me, because sometimes it's created to justify gaps. So Auditor General, what Senator Mtata is asking is, in terms of advisory, what is it that you have put to the county executive to ensure that this is not used to cover up fraud?
Thank you, Chair. Under the budgeting arrangement in the public service, Chair, is actually a program-based, meaning that every activity must be tied to a vote. If it's a project, it must drill down to the specific project, Chair, as a good practice, and see how the money has been allocated. As you rightfully said, when you charge other items and call them others, and you find the percentage is also high, that's also an area where you also need to raise a red flag, in the sense that there is a possibility of mischief when it's also under other expenditures. We have advised the county in terms of budget making process. Remember the CIDP and the annual development plan, that whatever program which is also coming to play must start from the people in terms of public participation, drill down into annual development plan. Then once you have that, you come up with the budget. Now once you have the budget, the budget must also be approved. Then once it's approved, you must also have a budget monitoring process, whereby you also be seen whether you are living as per the budget, Chair. That we have again done, and we are keenly monitoring the implementation of the budget, Chair.
Governor, you wanted to say something?
Chair, before Governor talks.
Okay, Senator Maria.
Chair, if I take you back to query number D of uses of goods and services, Appendix 1E, the same applies, but there is some names. Yeah, I thought these names is the staffs, maybe in the impressed. Somebody Wafula.
If you look at the names,
Yes.
then what she's saying, I was also, that's the first thing I spotted, and you will forgive me, Sumaili.
Yes.
The small accounting I was taught in school is that there's a certain, there's a trend you notice in activity, and you notice there are individuals who, in this case, for example, because this thing is not paged, but I think it's on page 3 of the appendix with the schedule of other operations, and you find a name appearing which has got Oswila Onyango, Oswila Onyango, Oswila Onyango, and all the money was going to the governor's office. You see there on the right, yes. 300,000, 500,000, 400,000, 400,000. Then you come down, you see George Simiu, Okwara, Ikirapo, Okwara, and all that money, you look at it.
Chair, if it is now under this, what is it called, under other operation expenses, it means this impress cannot be accounted for. Yes. Once it is not an interest because it's an expenditure. So, Chair, as I stated, I had also on these other operations, this shows that there is a negligence on the side of accountants.
I think we have made the point, and if you look at the other financial year that we'll be finishing with, other payments was 1.2 billion. 1.2 billion, close to 20% of your exchequer release. So that should be a worrying trend. I think that should have been flagged. I've seen there an explanation that mainly ward projects, but a ward project could be a road. That is an acquisition of an asset. A ward project could be public participation. That is use of goods and services.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, so even these ward projects cannot just be lumped up like that. And if you want to manage them that way, then establish a ward development fund so that it's a separate fund. You put money in it, and then it is accounted for separately. I'm hoping that in your year in office, we are not going to see this, but this was a very dangerous trend that could lead to loss of public funds.
Thank you, Chair. Well guided, because I also agree with you that even when it's ward programs, there are still programs being executed by departments. And that's why I said that let the departments be the ones that are implementing and accountable once you have identified the projects required. But as I said, now this is a situation that we found the way it was, but there are a lot of lessons we have learned from this, as much as we also try to see that there is value for money, the taxpayers' money. But I'm well guided because there is also that clause under this budgeting thing on the issue of others. But as you are putting it, when you start seeing others percentage being too high, then it means you are not really isolating the items that you are supposed to be dealing with. Because others should just guide you, maybe things that may not be able, to fit in their various schedules. But it becomes a big percentage of your expenditure, then it means there's something not correct. Either you have to put a program and say, this is a program and it's identified. So I'm well guided, Chair.
Yeah, there's a substantive finding on misclassification of expenditure, so we'll look at it and you'll see that come out clearly. No. Let me turn to the Chair of the Public Accounts Committee of Busia County Assembly. As your committee considered this report that we are dealing with, to the point of taking a resolution to the House?
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, these reports were tabled in the County Assembly in the month of November last year. So out of the intricacies that were there in terms of getting the responses for enable the committee to decide this matter, it was not fruitful. So what I wanted to mention, Chair, that the County Assembly of Busia hasn't completed these reports, both for 2019-2020, 2020-2021, 2021-2022, for reasons I've been able to mention. However, the observation we're able to make from this discussion will be part of our considerations when we're able to have this report tabled for the County Assembly of Busia Public Accounts Investment Committee. Thank you.
Okay, Chairman, we do not have any doubt as to your capacity and ability to lead your team. And you have been with us when the assembly has appeared, you have been around, and we have had a lot of interactions. So I don't think there's a capacity problem in the Vihiga, in the Busia Public Accounts Committee. Just do what you need to do so that you fulfill your bit on primary oversight. I think on this, we would perhaps exit by saying that the committee cast some doubts on the schedule presented on other payments. And since they related to ward operations, we'll be asking the county assembly to ensure that they verify that schedule, particularly the 700 million. Because sitting where we are sitting, we cannot do much. But you in the assembly, you know what happened in the wards. But maybe the neater thing to do going forward, if it is necessary to have these ward-based projects, then set up a fund. It might spare you a lot of problems. Yes, Governor.
Chair, I think we will also maybe need your assistance, because if you look at what we are talking about here and the way the budget was segregated, you'll find this is where, you know, what was sent to the assembly as a budget and what came back, there was a very big variance, whereby sometimes the county would say, you know, we are going to collect maybe 350. Then there's a variance to say, no, you should collect 1 billion without any due process. And then from there, there's a rush to allocate these funds to ward-based programs. So sometimes in real sense, these funds are not there in terms of the real budget, because you have said you are going to collect 1 billion, which was changed, and it doesn't come, and you go along to allocate ward-based programs. Now, I don't know, I'm not an expert, and I'll need to be guided between the County Governments Act in terms of the budget making process and the PFM Act, and how they should synergize and help each other, so that we don't go through a process of making the budget almost for a whole year. And then when we are appropriating, you know, we can come up with such a big variance without any justification, and which you know that is not implementable, because in the long run, it just creates a deficit. So you'll be coming up with programs, but in the real sense, there is no money. So there are a bit of these problems that I have seen, that within just maybe 1 or 2 financial years, you come up with a maybe 1.4 billion, which in the true budget making process, it is not. And you put it under own source revenue. And then you move very quickly to allocate projects. But if you sit down and analyze the budget, you see even the memorandum when it's sent to the assembly that, you know, we may not be able to raise this money, you know, it just goes. So you are left to come up with all these things, and as you can see, some of them are rushed to be put under others, because there is no linkage between the budget making process that was sent and what is now coming out of there as to be implemented. Thank you, Chair.
And I know your county secretary or CEC Finance will tell you that in the PFM Act, the law does not allow county governments to have budget deficits, such that when it arises that you cannot achieve your revenue targets, then there has to be a supplementary revising down your expenditure. Let me allow the Vice Chair to go on record, and also Senator for Tharaka Nithi.
Good morning, Governor, and your delegation, and all of us. My name is Cherargei Kiprotich, Senator Nandi County, and the Vice Chair of this committee. My apologies for coming late. I was in Roads Committee.
Welcome, Senator. Senator Mufa.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Senator, it's already afternoon.
Yeah, it's already afternoon.
This is Senator Mwenda Kataya Mofaya, Tharaka Nithi County, member of this committee.
Okay, welcome, senators. So the reason why we spent a lot of time on issue number 1, because this conversation solves a lot of problems that will be coming up. And we shall demonstrate as we proceed to the second issue. I think we exit this, but with that rider, that we'll be asking for some further verification of those expenditure. And Governor, we take note of your concern. We'll be dealing with that, because we had also cited your own source revenue, budgets of 900 versus collection of 200. And we are going to spend some time to talk about that. So, OAG, issue number 1.2, this one you marked as resolved. Number 1.2 is resolved.
Yes.
But the issues are similar to, the causes and symptoms are similar to what we have dealt with
Yes,
at
yes,
1.1.
yes.
Fine, so we'll take the written responses there. 1.3.
1.3 the same, Chair.
As again the same, so we'll take the written responses. We go to number 2. On unsupported use of goods and services, I think here there's still a gap of 138 million.
Yes, out of, Chair, 276 million, we have been able to verify 138 million. And we have not been able, we have the payment vouchers, but we have not gone through all of them. It may require some little while to ascertain the authenticity of the payment vouchers amounting to 138 million. Chair.
So that 138 million is with respect to training expenses. Okay. Governor, what's your response on that? Issue number 2.
Management response, training expenses of Kenya shillings 276,537,244. The management want to agree with auditors' observation. Previously, there has been problem in tracing the vouchers at the time of audit, which led to non-provision of the required documents. However, the vouchers and supporting documents have been availed for verification. To address the above challenge, the management has taken the following measures. Introduction of voucher movement register. The departments have been instructed through a memo from the county secretary to retain copies of paid vouchers as backup. The management is in the process of formulating a training and development policy through Human Resource Advisory Committee. This will address the training needs of staff handling the records. Appendix 4A, it's giving us the payment vouchers, minutes of County Human Resource Management Advisory Committee on training need assessment, memo from the County Secretary instructing departments to retain paid vouchers as backup, and extract of voucher movement register, showing what the management is doing.
I think hold it there because that's where the concern is. The concern is on training expenses. For the other lines, medical drugs, etc., the Auditor General has indicated satisfaction with the response. So on training expenses, the unsupported amount was 276 million. Unsupported amount is basically in layman's English. They would consider it stolen amount unless supported. So what the common man, the border operator in Busia, interprets when he sees unsupported training expense of 276 million is waliiba hiyo pesa. But so far the Auditor General has confirmed that 138 million of that 276 has been supported, leaving 138 million. So can you focus on telling us where that 138 million is?
Chair, I think all these documents have been given to the auditors, but as I said, the auditors, from what they have said, they need to verify so that then they can be able to ascertain what is really acceptable and what may not be acceptable, or then we can deal with it from that time.
How do we know that it has been availed to the Auditor General? Because we don't seem to have that breakdown as a Senate, and it's the reason why we have this meeting. So, Auditor General, is there a schedule that you have that we don't have?
Chair, even besides that, sorry, Chair.
Senator Mofai.
Chair, even Chair, we need to be a bit serious on some issues. We are told almost like 12 years since the Shetland Revolution, we have counties in place that small bookkeeping issues. And you can't trace the vouchers, you can't trace the documents. It's something that brings a lot of suspicion. You know, one way of trying to conceal evidence is to get away with the documentation. That is the only way. You know, once you know there is some fishy issues here and there, you conceal the evidence through concealing documentation. That's the only way you can justify that we are not able to account for this money because documents were not available. I know these are bookkeeping issues. We have all systems in place. They are counting records and all these things. So how do you afford to lose documents worthy of 200 something million? It's funny. It's not something that one can explain.
Actually, the first question we had put to the governor was the magic that he has used to provide documents now, and not then, if it is not cooking. So we have a gap of 138 million. I think let's focus on that. How do we close that gap, or do we conclude that 138 million was stolen through training expenses?
Chair, as I said, without going back to the earlier conversation about records, as you have said, documents have been provided to the Senate, because at that time, to the auditors, at that time it was this 276. Out of that, from what we are getting, it's only 138 that they can say they have verified, which means the exercise is still not over. So that then where there will be issues in terms of even suspicions or further verifications, then that can be brought to our attention and the attention of the committee for further direction.
Auditor General, what's your...
Thank you, Chair. We received the entire band of documents. And out of that, because when documents come later and looking at the materiality of the figure, 276, we are now to take our time to look through the documents, and we have already verified one that hit out of that bundle. And we are asking for some little time because many of our officers were actually out on field, and such you cannot just clear on the face value, Chair.
So you're saying it's work in progress?
Yes.
Due to the volume or due to the late submission?
One is about late submission and volume. When you are also having a lot of documents coming too late, you have also to be careful about the density of the documents, Chair. That's why we needed time to filter them carefully, Chair.
Okay, members. Senator Onyonke, then the Vice Chair.
Governor, I wanted to ask you, in your finance team that you have right now, how many individuals do you have who were in the previous government? I think you understand why I'm asking you this question.
Yes, yes, through the chair again, I understand the ones at the top level here, they are all new team.
Okay.
But now when you go to the other cadre, there are those who are our normal civil servants, still in some of the positions that they were in. There are some places where we have also done a little bit of rationalizing. That means going through the normal processes. But at the top level, where we are allowed to bring in a new team, that we have done. But the other cadre is still just the normal public service team.
So from what you're saying, I remember I listened to Madam explaining what mitigating factors you brought in by keeping the record of the vouchers and everything. In other words, what you're saying, we actually need to bring in a law which standardizes how all counties in Kenya are going to keep data and evidence and information pertaining to what is happening right now, so that when you work with.
Yes.
Okay.
Already it's...
Do you get all your drugs from KEMSA or other independent, like the one by Catholic? I don't know, it's called Meds. So do you get them from KEMSA or Meds? And then to Somalia, have you been able to verify these vouchers? Because in their response, and anti-authentic, Public Audit Act Section 62 on late submission of documentation. Thank you, Chair. Maybe Ismail and then go.
Yes, Chair. And we bought the justification because, as you said, when there is also a change of government chair, you have also to be careful about the handover and takeover procedures. And that's why we filtered and said part of it is already verified, and the outstanding we have committed chair to verify and advise the committee chair.
Okay, the general observation around medical procurement?
Chair, what we found again, and still is a practice, that the first priority should be cancer. If everything can be available from there, it is even easier for procurement. But unfortunately, sometimes they don't have everything. But we have also now come up with KEMSA, especially the counties, with a system whereby even I myself will be alerted on the orders there and what is there and what is not there before a decision is made by the department, maybe to source it somewhere else, because we also found that maybe it was like a lacuna, why sometimes people don't want to procure from KEMSA and they want to go to private vendors. So I'm sure you are aware it's a discussion that county governments have been having with KEMSA to improve those services. But just to answer that question directly, yes, KEMSA is a priority, that medicines, but they also get from other vendors if they are missing. But we also now wanted to know, is it really missing or is it just missing because of you? And that KEMSA has now put a system in place that can alert us that they don't have this. Then we can allow these officers now to go to other entities.
Yeah, I think we need to get rid of these questions around record keeping so that the next time we're in the Senate, those are the issues, strategic issues that we are discussing. Unfortunately, we are stuck on vouchers and records, and I don't think that's where we should be 12 years since devolution. Senator Mariam Omar, your final comment on this?
Chair, I want to raise also on this schedule 4A. From behind, page 1 and 2. Even if it is a immaterial figure, there is a payment done in 17th February 2024. So auditors check, make notes.
On
so
which page is it?
From behind is 1, 2.
The
Annexure 4A. 4A.
The first page.
Now from behind, the last page, 1 and 2. There is 17/02/2024. I don't think it is
17/02/2024?
2024.
That's to Joventure Hotel.
The dates.
Joventure Hotel Limited?
Yes.
Of 18,000.
18,000.
So how do you explain that, Governor, as sample of training expenses?
This thing are not pages.
Yes, I've seen it. So how would we have 2024 payments for training relating to 2021-2022? So then we Auditor General, you see now you have a lot of work to do just to confirm the authenticity of what is presented. How much time do you need to conclude this?
Chair.
Because ideally from the earlier conversations and the comments of the Senator for Busia, we should not even be giving more time because there's been 2 years for this to run.
In fact, the practice as per the Act is that everything should be given at the time of the audit.
Yep.
And once a certificate has been issued, it's upon the committee now to pronounce itself, because we should not be allowing late documents to address past issues. For this verification, Chair, 2 weeks will be adequate for us.
Okay, we give you 2 weeks to confirm to us how the 138 billion was used. Otherwise, we'll flag it as theft, and then we will assign culpability to the officers who are present. We go to number 3 on unsupported acquisition of assets. I think there was an issue here, so you'll need to read out your finding.
Thank you, Chair. unsupported acquisition of assets. The statement of receipts and payments reflects acquisition of assets amounting to Kenya shillings 363,381,172 as disclosed in Note 10 to the financial statements. The expenditure includes construction of buildings amount of Kenya shillings 3,769,825. However, payment vouchers and other supporting documents were not provided. Further, the expenditure includes an amount of 4,500,000 relating to acquisition of land, out of which an amount of 4 million was paid for acquisition of 0.2 hectares of land for Busia Municipality Cemetery. However, a valuation report by the Ministry of Lands and Fiscal Planning indicated that the land comprised of 4 plots, while official search for the land indicated that the land measured 3.32 hectares. No explanation was provided for the contradictory information on the size of the land, and the management did not provide a title deed for the land. In the circumstances, the accuracy, ownership, and valuation of the expenditure on land amounting to 4 million shillings and construction of buildings amount of 3,769,825 could not be confirmed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Governor, what's your response?
A management response. A, expenditure for construction of building of Kenya shillings 3,769,825. It is true that at the time of audit, payment vouchers and other supporting documents amounting to Kenya shillings 3,769,825 had not been made available. These have since been availed for verification. Appendix 5A, certified copies of payment vouchers and other supporting documents for construction of building. B, acquisition of 0.2 hectares of land. The management paid for 0.2 hectares of land at Kenya shillings 4 million. As per the auditor's report, which was to be hived off from the mother title measuring 3.32 hectares. Available records indicates an offer to buy land for title deed Buhayo Mundika 120366. However, the management noted some inconsistencies in the offer letter, valuation and purchase documents. The sale agreement and the title deed indicated the parcel number to be Buhayo/Mundika/14638, measuring 3.32 hectares. However, the valuation report provided was for the parcel Buhayo/Mundika 120366, which had been crossed and substituted with Buhayo/Mundika 14638. In the circumstances, the management is unable to ascertain the authenticity of the documents in support of the transaction. Appendix 5B, it's Buhayo/Mundika/14638, which is agreement for sale in the provided copy of title, deed and such certificate. That is for one title. Another number, Buhayo/Mundika/12066, offer letter and valuation report.
What is the relevance of the second appendix? Because it has not been referred to in the body of your response.
The management is trying to explain the documents that was found in regards.
In your response, you have 120366. In your appendix, you have 12066. Are they the same?
That was typing error. It's supposed to be 12066.
12066.
Yes.
So you're amending your response to 12066, not 120366.
Yes.
Because land, if you get a number wrong, you are dealing with someone else's property.
Yes.
So that's the, the due care that you need to exercise when filing this.
Sorry.
Okay, had you come to the end of your submission?
Yes.
Auditor General, in terms of the issues of documentation and support?
Yes, Chair, the documents for 3.7 million were provided and they have been attached here because there are not many. The issue we have not been able to resolve is the second issue of the cemetery, Chair. Thank you.
So, Governor, what's the solution? Because you have said in the circumstances, management is unable to ascertain the authenticity. That kind of language is used by auditors, not management. You are supposed to provide a solution, not cast doubt.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'm well guided. I think we just need to do further investigations and see how best to come out of this from what the investigators can give us. Because as you can see, with the different records for different properties that we are talking about, it became very difficult for us to find out. But as I say, it just now needs a further investigation. Then we can be well advised on what course of action to take.
Payment was made.
Yes.
4 million.
Yeah.
You have no title deed.
It's not there.
It's not there.
Yes.
And you are also not sure what you're buying.
Yes, because what you're being provided for and when you go to check are completely different things.
Is there a place, that cemetery of course is a physical location.
Yes.
Do you know the physical space that the county was paying for? If someone was to ask you, take us to the cemetery that we paid 4 million for, are you able to take them?
Yes, I can take them. Yes, I can take them. It's just near the no man's land on the border between Kenya and Uganda, just next to the border, the one-stop border point. And even in terms of symmetry, if we look at what we are doing with our town planning, our partial development plan that we're in the process, this is not the ideal place, and even the size of it. But more so, to answer this question is that the documents available, we cannot say that this is our symmetry because they're in conflict. But funds were paid, and that's the situation we are in. It also needs.
But then, Governor, this one should not be complicated.
Yes,
because even if there are legal officers around, you know the space in them. You already know it's close to the no man's land.
In fact,
they're
already burying people.
You can walk to it and point at it.
Yes.
You just need a surveyor to confirm the LR number for that particular space, instead of this kind of response. I mean, if it was your land that you have bought, and then a valuation report is different from sale agreement,
that I need to physically.
That one, you are not getting off that easily because you are a practical man.
Yes.
You are a man who has been a cabinet minister.
Yes.
And many other things.
Yeah.
Is there another problem here?
Chair, to the best of my understanding, I think we are not very clear what we really, bought.
Yeah. But watu wanazikwa hapo.
Watu currently wanazikwa.
Simama hapo ulize surveyor, which LR is this?
That's what I said, that I stand guided, so that I may need to give it personal attention. Because from the response that you have had here is, when we saw that what we are having and what is available are completely not agreeing. And we have got a lot of land problems in some of those places, especially where you're acquiring public land. It has been...
Chair, the government doesn't require any guidance there. I think it's just faking ignorance.
Not,
we know His Excellency Dr. Otuoma is a Lara guy,
we are about to declare him lazy in this matter.
So I stand guided. I'll be able to do the way you have said.
Chair, even when Governor, it's not conclusive, there's a gentleman I heard who introduced himself. He's your legal advisor. Boss, are you the county attorney or what's your job? There was somebody at the back. Was it you?
She's the county attorney.
You are the county attorney.
County attorney is the legal advisor.
Boss, you don't notice you're losing your job?
Because the Senate is now doing your job.
Yes, these are things you need to tell the governor. Follow due process, find out what the value evaluations are, get the LR numbers, go to the Ministry of Lands, confirm, talk to your CEC lands. Hey, boss.
I know, sorry, Chairman, the Department of Land should be doing something on it in terms of surveying.
Senator Omtata, maybe there's something we are not seeing that you can see with your spectacles.
I put them on very rare occasions.
Yes, but that's, I noticed.
I think, generally, Excellency, I think there's a big issue here. It's very clear that the seller is known. He does not dispute he sold the land. So I think there should be no reason why the Department of Land should not be having a title deed to this property. And as you can attest, remember one time I pointed out that some 40 acres of the government's land was in my neighborhood. Somebody was growing sugarcane on it. The title deed was with the registrar. Just that the fellows who sold the land were good enough not to tamper with it. So this, I think we just need to get the department concerned to go through its preliminaries. Especially, it looks like what I'm saying, there's no dispute. If people are being buried there, it means it is not disputed. The only thing is that you have not taken full possession of the land, and as the chair and others have said, just get the officer to take it up and then we sort it out. But then the other concern was said that it's not suitable for cemetery. Now, which I know also there has been that concern, maybe we also need to address that particular concern and maybe identify another site. Then down the line, see what you can do with this particular public asset. But securing it, I think you need to do it like yesterday. That's all, Chair.
So you, in terms of the existing facilities as per your spatial plan, there is a cemetery that is beyond capacity, or this is the first time you are formally designating one?
Chair, we are just, replanning the town. Even the spatial plan processes are still going on. And during that process, taking into account the various acts, Public Health Act and all this, is where we were saying that may not be the most suitable site. We need to plan for another site. Because Busia also being cosmopolitan, we have some Hindu who also have approached us. They need a place for cremation. We have got our Muslim population who normally also need something. So if you look at 0.2 and given the vicinity where it is, directly on the border where they're also trying to do some market thing there, it may not be suitable. So we said we just need to plan for a proper cemetery, but it can still be used because, as I said, people are burying there. But I stand guided. I will take action immediately I go back.
So I think there's a question of value for money here, which Auditor General, you need to keep that in view. Then there's a question of regularization or securing the asset of the county, which the governor, you should make sure, just practically make sure that you have title to this, because the challenges you have cited here are not insurmountable. They seem like small things that can be done within one day. Could we then proceed to misclassification of expenditure? This one, I think we dealt with it when we were talking about other payments, and it's the same problem. It's the same problem because here you have put 5.7 million as other payments rather than as wages. So in essence, you are understating your compensation of employees. So because we have dealt with this matter extensively, and it's the same principle, I don't think there's any defense here. I don't think that you would put in any defense.
That's actually a statement of fact.
It's a statement of fact. Hii ni ile unasema makosa imefanyika. Then you deal with it going forward. So we'll take the written response. Let's go to accounts payable, pending bills. Now, pending bills, because this is a very historical report, Governor, what we want to first understand before getting into the details is, upon assumption of office, what situation did you inherit? What actions did you take? And what is your current status as far as pending bills are concerned? Because it might not be very sensible to look at figures 2 years ago. So first give us that picture before we ask specific questions.
Thank you, Chair. After assuming office, we came up with a task force committee to look into various issues, of course, where pending bills was one of the issues. Once the task force report was available, tabled it to the Assembly and brought back to the Executive to be adopted, we were able to approach the Office of the Auditor General at that time, and we just wanted guidance if they could give us, a team to do the verifications of the task force report which we have had, and to do verification of the pending bills. We also discussed this at both the IBEC and the COB, just on our situation. So we got some correspondence from the Auditor General that we could go ahead and appoint a verification committee, which we did, which has since given a report, and now we have an ad hoc committee looking at its. Yeah, it was, sorry, I was just rechecking. Our figure was around 3 billion. 1.7 billion was for normal pending bills. 1.3 was statutory unremitted statutory deductions, KRA, lab fund and lab trust. And the other ones were now different vendors. So we are now, as I said, having this ad hoc committee to look at the implementation framework. We were also required by them to submit the same to COB in terms of how we are going to pay. As I speak to you now, I've also been, I think the tribunal issues that we were having with KRA, they have also ruled that even if those issues are still going on, we must come up with a repayment plan. Otherwise, they'll be able then to take the next course of action. The other two bodies on statutory deduction, we have also been trying to discuss with them, because most of it is penalty, to discuss with them on how best to be able to pay without crippling the operations of the county. But for KRA, I think there was also a cabinet decision on how they should be able to handle some of these government bodies. I'm yet to know exactly what, but is one engagement that I'm just stepping in. How are we going to be paying, as we are still trying to appeal on how that's the figure of 720 was arrived at. But the ruling, we went to the tribunal, I think. Yes, we went to the tribunal, they ruled no. Even as your cases are still going on, start paying. So we are in that, finalizing that. But that is the situation. The other one, I believe by end of this month, we should be very clear on what we are paying between the different categories. Where there was a direct issue that, please, these ones, the records were available, go ahead and pay. These ones, there are partial records available. They needed further scrutiny. Then there were also others where there was, they could not be verified. So even those we will need to make a decision on how do we deal with them. But that's the situation when we took over office.
Maybe to the chair, Park, was the report brought to the Assembly?
The task force.
The task force report on pending bills? Yes. It was brought to the Assembly. And maybe just your account effect to the report.
I can't remember when, but the task force report. Because this pending one, we are yet to, the work is done, it needed again to go back to the Auditor General for that. But when we had our last meeting, they said no, If you have already done the verifications as it was agreed, you must now come up with an implementation framework on paying pending bills. So that's what we are.
Which is very important. Before I allow Senator Onyonka, because what we are trying to establish is that, one, the situation you inherited.
Yes.
Two, the action you are taking.
Yes.
And three, to be careful that you don't have that thing they call the paralysis of analysis, which is a problem in most counties. They verify and re-verify and re-verify. In the end, no one gets paid, because I'm already hearing something went to the assembly and you are still not sure whether to take it back or whether to take it to the OAG. That's a paralysis of analysis that many counties have gotten stuck in. That it becomes then an exercise that does not end. You're spending more time in boardrooms and task forces. But I know Senator Onyonka might have something around task forces and that entire process.
That's true. I'll tell you, Chair. I'm sure His Excellency will tell you is that the reason why he's going through those task forces is that if he is being accused of having participated. The question I wanted to ask you, and this same question goes to the Auditor General. I would like to hear why are we unable to pay NHIF, NSSF? Why? Statutory deductions. I mean, if you leave the other pending bills out there, you have your workforce that works in the county. These are people, and I can extend it further to even say this is the same problem you have with the other health insurance which the county governments are taking for the employees of the county. And yet, in reality, 3/4 of the counties that have come here are unable to pay the statutory deductions. Why?
Chair, if you allow me, one of the difficulties that I have seen, as we speak today, you know, the issue about sharing of assets and liabilities between counties and the national government has not been concluded. And I remember some of the liabilities that we are currently facing, especially on legal. When they took over, I don't know whether without knowing, they became overzealous in accepting some of the liabilities. And as I told you, especially these legal liabilities, yeah? Now, you find you go to court and you lose. When we discussed this even in the COG, it was like the position is, before we share assets and liabilities, we cannot commit ourselves. But where a matter has already been taken to court and the county has accepted, then you're on your own because the courts have already pronounced themselves. But if we had not done that, then we should be saying pronounce themselves. But if we had not done that, then we should be saying the problem is the interest. Like you can find, I think we were being asked for around 50 or how much? For lab fund or lab trust. 500. You know, it comes to around 300, but if you look at the real principle, it was hardly 50 million. So when you try to negotiate with them, that, you know, we are still going through that process of assets and liabilities, and these are people's money. Why don't we allow counties to pay maybe the principal as we try to see how to sort out the interest? Then they'll come up and say their hands are tied because of the pension fund. They cannot reduce this thing to less than 10%. So we are going, you know, forth and backwards. But the bigger issue is that we still have not, you know, shared the issues of assets and liabilities between national governments and counties. The only legal things we are facing is those counties that somehow agreed to go to court. But those that have refused on issues of we wait until we share liabilities and assets, they are not having problems. But as we are having problems, some of my staff are on warrants because of some of these court things that have been issued. So that's the situation that we are in. Even NHIF, the way you are saying, we are trying to pay the tax. You know, when you just come all of a sudden and tell us you owe us 700 million shillings, what has been happening throughout this whole process? Because if it is payee, if it is taking money for a certain thing, it should be ascertained. But you see, you're in the tribunal still trying to dispute even the amounts. The next thing you know, either your accounts have been seized, you are told you pay, or we will take this action. So sometimes we are also finding ourselves in very, very difficult situation, because then that means you start making provisions to start paying off. Now, if we are like ourselves to do these 3 billion shillings, then we'll almost be paralyzed. But at the end of the day, we have to find mechanisms on how to pay, and also the national government to accept that if some of these debts are from local authorities, what do we inherit and what can be taken over?
I think let's come to the numbers. And within the Council of Governors, we've been thinking that of the problem.
That's why I'm saying what I'm saying, Chair, that if we unbundle assets and liabilities between the counties and national government, then we'll be able to know how to sort. Like one of the problems we faced, a practical one, which I had acted on when I was in office, we were exchanging certain assets, local authority assets, to pay debts with some of these statutory, like lap fund and lap trust.
Asset swaps.
Yes, asset swaps. But now what has happened with time, when they came to realize that they were not getting value, you know, they were able to convince some of the counties that, no, you have back these assets, let us reinstate the debt. Now, you find that the assets they're bringing, a lot of those local authority houses, you know their state. They came to realize that they cannot maybe collect that 300 million shillings. So then they would say, okay, can you get back now your assets and we reinstate the debt? But I was saying that must still go through a process, because by the time you are being given these assets, it was to offset the debt. Now you can't just come unilaterally and say, no, we are returning this asset to the county, but reinstating the debt with interest. Because when you are having the assets, you shouldn't have been charging counties interest. But they are removing, they say we have returned your assets, and they go back with interest, which is very high.
So there are two things here. There's the transfer of assets and liabilities, which is taking too long. I was also the chair of the devolution committee in the last parliament, and we made a lot of progress. There were so many gazette notices. There were county assets and liability verification committees that were established. But then COG again is caught up in that paralysis of analysis, because you even sought more money to conduct a fresh audit of those assets and liabilities. And it will go on until some assets that are in that register, like motor vehicles, will have decayed. Computers will no longer make sense. Land will have been stolen. Buildings will have changed hands. It is going on here in Nairobi. I chaired a committee meeting in the devolution committee where land belonging to doctors and nurses in Pumwani Hospital has been allotted to private hands, and yet they're in that register of assets that were supposed to have been transferred from one level of government to the other.
So remember, the revoking of gazettement from the IG at TRC the other day, even in terms of functions and things like this is what is causing these problems, because it had already been agreed, it had been registered, gazetted. Then unilaterally, an individual just says, no, you know, we need to revoke the gazette notice so that we revisit the matter, and then it stalls everything. So sometimes these problems may look like they're at a COG, but I think it's just a general paralysis on releasing activities and functions, and as we say, resources following the functions. And this is where there is that lacuna, because even the biggest contributors to LAP Fund and LAP Trust are the county governments. And if these bodies are allowed, they can come to some kind of agreement with county governments, even to unlock some of the resources that are there to help, kickstart development in counties. But you find we are contributing our employees, but in terms of investments, there's no synergy in what is coming. So the problem could also just be, I would beg the Senate, just like it was envisaged, to protect devolution, to support devolution, because opportunities are there, but as you are putting it, these bureaucracies are a big problem. We told them, come and even then invest in some of these things we are calling houses, this thing of a bit of this infrastructure from some of your pension funds. But they are not willing to do that. They would like to take us again in cycles, to go back to the Ministry of Housing and all that. And it becomes an issue. If we had those kind of arrangements, I'm sure we would even be able to get rid of some of those debts, be able to write because of the potential to do business even more. But that is not happening. Last time they told me they want to do that, they told me you pay first. And we had really progressed in terms of what they could do so that progressively we can deduct some of the money. But when you ask me for cash from equitable share, how do I do it? I need to buy medicine. It becomes a problem, Chair.
Auditor, so I think the issue of assets and liabilities, it's a matter that is before the devolution committee. I think the devolution and finance committee, so we can deal with it there. Yes. Senator Onyonka is in the finance committee, I believe so, and devolution as well. But coming back to pending bills, is it a requirement to have an aged analysis of pending account payables? Because that helps us to see what is beyond 360, what is old and what is current. Because what the governor is talking about could be debt as old as 1,000 days, dating back to local government. But the debt incurred during the time of devolution, senators sent money to counties every year, and pending bills is supposed to be a fast charge. So the question is why they continue carrying those current debts without settlement.
Thank you, Chair. This issue of pending bills, we have nothing like that in proper accounting. Because in proper accounting, this was a coinage of so-called pending bills. The right thing, Chair, is that pending bills are accounts payable. And accounts payable, you have to age them. And once you age them, aging shows when this debt was incurred. Therefore, you can segregate. If these debts are for 20 years, you can see if it's a debt for 20 years, you have also to, when it reaches the 7th year, Chair, you have to make provisions because the possibility of either recovering or paying for the same becomes a problem. Therefore, aging is a requirement and accounting, Chair. And my request was, since the accounting template is changing from cash basis of accounting to accrual basis of accounting, which should be reported in the year 23, 24.
The procedure for the witness to exit must be established, and it needs to be by the leave of the chair, because you are the one who took the oath. So do we need us to excuse you for how many minutes? If you want a time out?
Chair, just wanted to take a cup of coffee.
Or you are serving coffee?
Yes.
Oh yeah, because you are walking with the knees knocking like you are going outside. Yeah, you can take coffee. Then there's no need for adjournment.
It is rare for governors to serve coffee on their own.
Yeah, I think the sergeant at arms can help the witness on that.
So that
yeah, proceed. Since the
yeah,
in the room.
therefore I was saying, as the Committee for Finance looks at this issue of pending bills, again, they should also tie it to the period when we are also moving accrual. Because once you have accrual, Chair, you'll be able to see on a glance when this debt was incurred, so that you can even apply the very fast charge, because you can see if the debt was incurred this year. Why should this year's debt be paid before last year's debt? Because this is where some of the suppliers are also suffering. They did some work with the government and they have not been paid, and they borrowed, and the money has also a cost. Therefore, that is workable, Chair.
Okay, so can we get, even as the governor resumes his seat, maybe a technical person can address this, of the 3 billion that was inherited, 1.7 and 1.3, how much of it was legitimate as per the task force report, and how much of it was hot air? Because you have a task force report that went to the assembly, I'm sure it had the numbers.
Chair.
Chair, I think to the best of my memory, there was around 300 million shillings, which the verification team said they had enough records and those ones we could go ahead and pay. There was around 600 million, which they said there were some partial records, some further information needed to be provided. And then there was around 700 million shillings, which they could not ascertain. Yes, that is the situation. That excludes
that's 1.7.
Yes, that excludes now the statutory
deductions.
Yeah, statutory, I think
1.3.
Yes, 1.3.
Okay, if this report of the task force has been processed by the assembly, that means it's a public document. It is not work in progress. I think what we'll be directing is, for purposes of us to do a report on this, we'll also need to be seized of that report. We need a copy of that report. Can you make sure that the report as approved by the assembly is shared with the Senate?
Much obliged.
So that we can see those numbers as at that point.
There are two things, Chair, maybe for clarity. There's the task force report and there's the verification committee's report. The one, because for us to have done verification, we needed authority from the Auditor General. That's the team we appointed, the UCO team, that was doing verification.
So that came after the assembly?
That came after the assembly. It was part of now implementation of the task force reports, recommendations of the task force report.
So there was a task force, yes. There was a verification?
Yes, there's a verification.
And then, after that?
Now, after this verification is where we are saying we need an implementation framework. Because initially, our thinking was that verification report must be sent to the Auditor General before maybe we start implementing. But after we were told no, just go ahead, and once the team that did the verification report is one of the teams that is allowed to do those kind of things, start just having an implementation framework. Then now I said, okay, in that case, let's have a small ad hoc committee to look at it on how we are going to implement, and that's what we said before the end of this month. We should be paying off those people who have got no issues. They should be looking at those ones. They said they are partial records. What happens to them? There are those ones where there was no, records at all.
So, Governor, in the meantime, people are not getting paid.
No, where there are no issues, they are paying. But you see, the report has got various sections. What do we do in places where they are saying you have partial records? So you need a team to look where, just like some of the things we have been having here, that these records have not been availed. And we thought just making a blanket cover, we are going to have problems. We need a team that will tell us, this one they say that this is missing. Who checks? Who finds out what is missing? Is it available? If it is not available, what do we do? Because it's now an implementation framework. Where they were completely saying that there are no records, what do we also do? Because they are saying there are these demands, but there is no, they can't verify. We will be able to share with you the report so that you see the recommendations that they gave.
Okay.
So what we are looking at is just the implementation framework. But where the issues are direct, we have no problem with that.
Fine, we'll go to Senator Nyonka, then Senator Mtata.
Thank you, Governor. The problem you're having is not uniquely a Busia problem. That is exactly the same problem there is in Kisii. So I'm going to ask you a very simple question, and this is the same question I've also asked in Kisii. Your verification team has told you that the money you can pay, and it has absolutely no problem, is 300 million.
Yes.
Why can't you pay?
This is now what we're saying. We want.
But you want us to create another task force, to go and bring another task force, to organize another task force, to come and do what the other task force is going to do as a task force.
And that's the analysis that I was talking about, that paralysis of analysis.
And Chair, through you, Governor Otuoma, through the rule of first in, first out, if there's somebody who worked in 2015, why don't you pay them? You see, this is why we feel so frustrated.
Could we, as a governor response, take the intervention from Senator Mtata, then come back to Senator Cherargei. Senator Mtata.
This thing of pending bills, Your Excellency, maybe you could tell us what actions you are taking to ensure that we don't incur any of these things that cannot be located. Secondly, the County Assembly passes a balanced budget, and you are the county governor, the county executive, can introduce a supplementary budget where you realize maybe that anticipated revenue is not coming in. Because people put up a revenue of, as you said, 900 million, and by the time you do 1 quarter, you have not raised 100 million, you may need to do a supplementary budget to deal with it. Secondly, I would like to depart a bit from what the Auditor General said about accrual accounting. A government is not a company. Each financial year has got an act to be implemented called the Appropriations Act. What mechanism would there be to get something incurred from a different budget introduced into a new budget cycle? So the thing we should just tighten is not to have any debts remaining at the end of the year, because you are implementing an act of parliament or an act of the county assembly, which you call the Budget Appropriation Act, which is fully balanced. So I think what we should encourage our governors to do is to use the facility of supplementary budgeting to make sure that at the close of the year there's no debt.
Books are balanced.
Books are balanced. Not the company way that you can carry a debt forward, because if you look at the constitution, it's cast in stone that you have to implement the Appropriation Act, which lasts for 1 year. You can do a supplementary Appropriation Act within certain parameters, and then the new budget cycle begins with new things. So I think we just encourage our county governments to find a way of cutting down on expenditure. Like His Excellency said, the MCAs bloat the budget. Those kind of things, we also must have mechanisms whereby where that kind of thing happens, the control of budget should participate and ensure that no bloated budget is approved. Otherwise, that bloating of the budget basically means you don't have money, you are creating expenditure when you have no money, which is illegal. So I think we should just clamp down, otherwise we are going to end up in a swamp of pending bills that we shall not be able to get out of. So I really pray that the Auditor General, you encourage governors to put their foot down and make sure that at the end of the year, they have balanced their books, preferably some surplus if there is, but they should be able to absorb all the expenditure of the year without a debt. And where there are any signs of a debt, the Appropriation Act should be used to ensure that the budget is readjusted to cover anything, so that by the close of the new year opens on a clean slate. That way we shall be able to manage this. And I think that has been happening until we got in this devolution cycle, that, as you say, the thing of pending bills is a new animal in the arena. So, Your Excellency, I would really encourage you to put your foot down and say that as we go forward for Busia, we don't carry any debts. We use the supplementary budgeting process to make sure 1 year closes and we close everything of that year. We move the next year, unless the project is running across several years. But each year will be budgeted for in the subsequent budget. That's all, Chairman.
Senator Mtata, we will. I think there was a challenge on the Office of the Auditor General, but it's more of a matter of interpretation about pending bills. Accountants say that there's nothing like that, but it's been with us. You've seen national government. I think the the coalition government also had a task force that was established on pending bills back then when Kibaki took over. So it's been a problem. And the other day, the national government made it even murkier by purporting to establish a verification for pending bills across government entities. I don't know whether it covered county governments or it was just for national government. But our problem is that we overanalyze. We must bite the bullet, and we must make sure that people are paid. Because in that conversation, I am looking at your Appendix 6A, and, there are debts relating to 2014. 2014. And you still have them here. And the debts of 2014, for example, one of them, the status is that it is verified. Can you go back to your Appendix 6A? Appendix 6A, under construction of buildings. Transmillennium Builders Limited. Debt contracted 18th of June 2014. 2014. Original amount 2.4. Amount paid 2.1. Tax and retention 368. Okay, so the outstanding balance there is 0. So it's been settled.
Yes.
Okay. You have another one of 2016 of Umbulo Company Limited. File not availed for verification. So these ones where you are saying file not availed for verification. Again, what other magic will produce the file? Because file not availed, then it is what Onyonka calls hot air. Why would you spend more money on them? We just want to understand that, because where it is verified, the next consequence is to pay. Where a file is not availed for verification, who is supposed to avail the file? Is it the service provider or the finance team internally? Where a file is not availed for verification, who has the responsibility to prove? Isn't it the guy who did the job? Who proves? Where is the onus? Auditor General.
The first onus, Chair, is the county executive, because it's the one which gave the job. It knows what it gave, and it knows how to maintain the documents.
So if file not availed for verification, what does it mean? That there is no record internally?
It has no record, and probably there was no work done.
So why should it be sitting as a liability in your books? Help us understand, because you are the practitioners on the ground. File not availed for verification. And this is the second round. You've had the first process that went to the assembly. You've got the second process, the ADVERTISE process. And this is a report, file not availed for verification. Why don't you just bite the bullet? Why don't you bite the bullet?
Chair, thank you so much again. I think the questions you are asking, I also asked them, but to the best again of my knowledge, in this case there was a figure of around 740 million shillings that had been flagged out. That specific figure, that is not the total amount of pending bills, but there was a particular figure of 740 that was incurred between 2014 and June 2021 that amounted to this. So in addressing this question, it was not completely about all the pending bills. It was on these particular items that had been captured in this 740. And whereby...
Which is not a problem, Governor. Because yes. I can see even in this appendix you've attempted to age the debt, even though I don't think 120 is... should it be above 365? I'm saying the maximum AGI is 120. Not a problem, because we can see the dates. But this appendix just raises that question.
Yes.
Where it is verified, you pay, isn't it? As long as resources are available.
Yes.
Where a file is not availed for verification,
yes.
Why are you still holding it as a liability in your books? Especially after 2 verification exercises.
Chair, this one I agree with you that it is
It has been causing very serious economic hardships to the people. And the only reason that, because of this thing, you are calling available, verified, and we also received communication from our partner agencies. Today they are not here, ESCC, at that time when we came to office, and they said, please, nothing should be paid unless it is verified. I think we got that kind of correspondence. And that's then the other issue was that you must have a verification committee. But I agree with you that there's nothing that stops us from paying. Can I ask Chair through this Honorable House that within, you said end of? So, Chair, if you find it near, I will just ask that if you give me up to the end of the month, I should have sorted out all those issues relating to the question that you're asking.
You see, it's easy to undertake, but then there's the issue of resources.
No, Chair, because we have done everything. As you say, sometimes it's forming a committee to look into a committee, and you have explained it well. Where the documents are available, we just need to have it sorted out. And I agree with you completely, because this has crippled some people. But again, it was also very difficult before these exercises to know whom to pay and whom not to pay. And Chair, another problem, as I said earlier, you would find projects that sometimes were conceived outside what I would have called a proper budget making process. You will find that they are again the ones in the forefront, and then projects that were completely supposed to have gone through proper budgeting process are the ones that sometimes that suffer because of this kind of thing. So we just wanted to be sure that we're also doing the right thing. As you alluded earlier on this other issue of other expenses, you remember we said some of these were ward-based projects. But from early thing you could see we had already created a deficit in the budget by coming up with figures that don't exist. So even if you want to prioritize, it becomes a problem. And they would now come in and call it as rollovers and things like that. So there's more that we needed to sort out also. To say if a project had been budgeted for properly, why should it suffer because of some of these other projects that came in a hurry? And truly, if you check, they were basing on it that, you know, we are going to quadruple on-source revenue to be able to raise money to pay these expenditures. And if you go in quickly, you will find those will be the things that you'll be dealing with. And most of them, in some places, as you have put it, they were not budgeted for properly, the funds were not there. So LPOs were given out, people went out, but the reality, there was no money in the budget. People just put figures in the budget, knowing very well there was that kind of money is not there. Because if you look carefully, within these 2 financial years, we created a deficit of almost 1.4 billion. Just through this thing of saying we'll collect 800, we'll collect 900 in subsequent years. And I had an issue also with the control of budget. Because I said, why were you approving this budget in the first place?
I believe the control of budget receives and processes budgets that have come from the county.
Yes.
And
but they also check.
And through certain processes of public participation and legislation. Because it's the next issue we are going into. I think let's find a way of closing this one on pending bills. We are going into the final quarter of the financial year. I think for me, the direction that should come from the Senate is that all verified pending bills must be settled on as a first charge.
Okay.
And this thing of unverified claims, which cannot be verified after 2 rounds, please be bold enough, throw them out. And as you are throwing them out, we have also directed ESCC and other agencies, because uttering false statements, lodging false claims against government, all those are offenses. ESCC should be able to take up those things because they are offenses committed through collusion by insiders. Because there's no way you are going to have a pending bill on this register and then a file cannot be found internally, and the service provider can also not provide the basic documents relating to how he got that tender. Because there will definitely be a tender advert, there would be an application, there would be all those records, which the service provider ideally would keep a copy even if the records of the county got burnt. So there has to be some finality to this. For the verified bills, I think the direction of the Senate is these must be paid as a matter of priority. And then we move to the next matter that might pose a challenge to that directive, that is on budgetary performance. But before we go to budgetary performance, let me ask Senator Mtata. I've seen you sought an intervention. If you have something to say on that before we move.
No, I think I fully endorse what you have said, and most of the things I was going to say you have worked.
But those ones that sometimes I say were created because of the budget deficit that we were running for the subsequent almost 2 years, those will have challenges. We have to either budget for them, and that means we must go through some processes. Now, given this opportunity, Chair, one of the issues that we are also facing, and that's the reason sometimes we were taking that long route, is that these audited and verified or verified accounts, sometimes we have been going to places in court. And when you go in court, sometimes then the legality of this verification document is questioned. And that sometimes again exposes us quite a lot. So it's something that maybe I was also trying to think the Senate may need to look into it because there are counties that have had that problem, and that's what we were also trying to avoid, to say what is then the legality of this document. And at that time is what I said earlier, that we thought we could take it back to the Auditor General for verification. But when they ruled during IBEC that no, counties should just, if you have done verification, just go ahead and implement. But there has been some rulings challenging these kind of processes.
I think you're referring to the matter, was it in Bungoma or in Kitale? Trans Nzoia.
Yes.
And the interpretation we got of that ruling is that the court took a purposive approach. It was about, of course, many task forces had already been established. I don't think that the courts threw out the reports of all those task forces. The caveat was, in implementation, ensure you involve the Office of the Auditor General. But in future, if you are to establish a task force, remember that that is an audit, which is a constitutional duty of the Office of the Auditor General. So for us, actions that took place before that decision, we can excuse. But subsequent actions would be in breach of that ruling. So I don't know whether you engaged AJAABU after the Trans Nzoia decision or before.
No, we engaged when it came out that there was, I can't remember the date, but we got a letter from the Auditor General allowing counties to come up with this kind of verification committees.
I'm sure your county secretary would be aware of the timelines. Did you establish the AJAABU committee after the Trans Nzoia decision or before? Because
I'm made to understand that it was already in the process before that judgment.
So had you already gazetted the task force?
Yes.
By that time?
Yes.
So what efforts did you take to bring the Auditor General on board? Because that's what we need to do.
Before we established this committee, we got correspondence from the Auditor General. But it was a general correspondence through COG for what counties could do, that they could go ahead and have those verification committees so long as it is an entity that is recognized. You remember those entities that can really do certain works on behalf of...
Your county attorney is here.
Yes.
County attorney, can you confirm that the county executive of Busia, the actions that it has taken before and after that decision are not in violation?
Thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that the actions are not in violation for 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, even before the judgment, the county had engaged the Office of the Auditor General through the correspondence that came through the COG, allowing the county governments to constitute the pending bills verification committees. Then secondly, subsequent to that judgment, the county government wrote to the Auditor General, because the judgment says well, it may have been unconstitutional, but if you take these audit reports to the Auditor General for ratification, then that will be proper. So subsequently, we took the audit report, the pending bills verification report, to the Auditor General for ratification. However, as His Excellency has pointed out, when it went to the Auditor General, he says at the IBEC meeting, the Auditor General communication was that no, we cannot ratify before you pay, because when you pay, you finally pay, we will be required to audit, so we'll be in conflict. However, we have, like I pointed out, engaged the Auditor General on those two occasions.
So what is the problem if you have followed that route? There should be no problem.
There should be no problem now.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So let's execute, and let's now look at the other reason why you might not be able to achieve that. We proceed to budgetary performance, and whereas this is usually a routine finding, but in Busia it is alarming. The rate of underperformance to the budget. Maybe, Auditor, just read out your finding and then we put it in context.
Thank you, Chair. Budgetary control and performance. The statement of comparison of budget and actual amounts combined reflects final receipts, budget and actual and comparable basis of Kenya shillings 10,230,377,635 and Kenya shillings 8,523,348,215 respectively, resulting to underfunding of Kenya shillings 1,707,029 and 420, or 17% of the budget. Chair, similarly, the county executive spent an amount of 7,329,947,028 against approved budget of 10 Kenya shillings 10,230,377,635, resulting to underperformance of Kenya shillings 2,900,430,607, or about 28% of the budget. The underfunding and underperformance affected the planned activities and may have impacted negatively on service delivery to the public. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, what was your response, Governor?
Management response. The management wishes to acknowledge that there was underfunding due to two reasons. One, an under collection of on-source revenue, which was caused by the following reasons: COVID-19 pandemics, which affected business environment, implementation of one-stop border posed as a result of the East African Protocol, which adversely affected our parking fees collection, an ineffective revenue automation system, and realistic of revenue targets. To address these challenges, the management has developed a database for all taxpayers to ascertain the correct number of taxpayers in the county, introduction of an alternative revenue stream of entry fee in the finance bill, replacing the parking fees which was affected by one-stop border, new automation system. Governor also, through a memorandum, requested the Assembly not to approve the unrealistic targets that could not be achieved. And the two reasons for underfunding is the late disbursement of exchequer from National Treasury, which we have Appendix 7A showing the CRF statement for late disbursement. We have 7B, which is a sample of database that we are collecting as account for taxpayers. 7C is contract award showing we have brought in a new system. And then we have the memorandum by the governor then and the comparison of revenue reports that made him to write a memorandum.
Now, why would there ever be a difference between your forecasts from CARA and your budget? because there was a variance. What was your current budget? Or did you receive fully what you had budgeted for?
No.
What was your budget from equitable share? Expected amount?
We can check from the then budget. We have an extract.
Because you had a budget of 7.8 billion and the actual was 6.8 billion. The 6.843, you remember you had explained that amount in the first query. 6.843, that was what you received. But your budget from the exchequer was 7.8 billion. So 1 billion more. So the question is, because what will come from the exchequer is so predictable. You know that there's going to be DORA, there's going to be CARA, and you can predict what you're going to receive. Why then would you expect 1 billion more out of the exchequer? Because that's where it starts from. That's where the over-budgeting starts from. Because Governor, you had alluded to that problem earlier, even though you had accused the Assembly of doing violence on budgets. But I doubt whether they can do 1 billion more. Yes.
Explain.
So, Chair, just so that I have clarity of mind, you are saying that why we are putting an extra amount of 1 billion from the exchequer releases?
Yes, as your budget.
Yes. Now, when this thing has come up, you know, sometimes there has been also the budgeting for the donor funds within the budget process. And you have the extract of the budget?
Remember, by the time you are budgeting, the budget policy statement is out.
Yeah.
And it has been approved by both houses.
Mm.
Even if DORA and CARA has not been processed, but the BPS is out.
Yes.
So for like now, the BPS has a figure of, I think, 391 billion. And of course, governors and maybe the Senate wants 450 billion.
Yes.
But you cannot budget on the basis of those sentiments.
Definitely.
You can only budget on the basis of the budget policy statement. So why then would your budget be 1 billion shillings more?
What was the reason here?
It is more. It was 7.8 billion versus 6.8 billion.
And Chair, can I ask a supplementary question on the same?
Yes. This is in your report, in your forward by the CCC Finance and Economic Planning.
In your revenue sources.
You've got a forward there. CCC to table analysis of revenue performance. That's page 8. Is that Roman 8?
Of what? The appendix?
No, of your financial statement. That is your own report.
Page 8,
Your Excellency Governor, I want to divert your attention a little bit from there so that you can pick up the rest. The follow-up question I was going to ask, comparing from 2023 and now, what is the shift and change in the on-source revenue that your county has been collecting? Have you dipped or have you peaked? Or are you within what it has been frequently or in the past?
We are just within what it has been in the past, the actual reality of what it has been.
Actually, on the same, let me then tie it to the on-source revenue question. Because the Parliamentary Budget Office, in their report, has flagged unrealistic revenue targets in Busia County and realistic revenue targets. And that's why sometimes you end up with unpaid bills because you had planned, in this year you had planned to raise 10 billion. You only raised 8.5 billion. Now that then has a bearing also on pending bills. And you know, Governor, this is a question of, it's not really to assign blame, but just to find out where the problem lies. Maybe it's even beneficial to us as senators because you're the practitioner on the ground. On on-source revenue, that year, you budgeted 976 million, but only collected 293 million. That's 30% performance. So, and you have attributed this to COVID. There was COVID in 2020, 2021, or which financial year? No. COVID started in 2021.
It started on the 16th of March 2020, Chair.
2020. So, in this financial year, even those tax waivers, etc., you know, it was predictable. We knew we were in a pandemic year. But your plan was 976, actual was 293. And I've seen the reasons you have given around COVID. Is it true, members of the County Assembly, that you become unrealistic and increase revenues without any rationale? I think the Governor had mentioned that initially. Chair, is that something that happens within the Assembly? Because there has to be a basis for revenue projection. If it's equitable share, it's a budget policy statement. If it's on-source revenue, it is the OSR potential of the county. And even though Senator Mtata has a different view, there's a point at which we had a different understanding of the role of Parliament in budgeting. Senator Mtata believes that before a budget is finalized, an assembly has unfettered right. The assembly writes the budget. In the same view, he argues that Parliament should do the budget. My view was that there are some restrictions in law on reallocations. But Senator Mtata, of course, quotes the Constitution extensively and was able to convince me that those limits only happen after the law has been passed. Senator Mtata, maybe I could benefit from your thoughts on that. The role of the Assembly in budget making. Who does the budget? Is it the Assembly or the Executive?
No, the Executive proposes a budget.
Yes.
The Assembly. They withdraw the budget statement when they bring in their estimates. First of all, the Assembly or Parliament, I say, they will give you the broad parameters under which. Oh, sorry. I was trying to enjoy the leaning back. What happens is that the budget policy statement that I referred to is the ceiling that the Assembly or the Parliament gives the Executive, that you can only do a budget under this ceiling. So the National Assembly, the County Assembly through the budget policy statement would set a ceiling within which the Governor would make the budget. Now that ceiling cannot be varied by the Assembly itself also. So now the Governor has got the free hand, or the Executive has the free hand to go ahead and now make a final budget. But even that budget policy statement is proposed by the Executive, then approved by the Assembly. Once it's approved by the Assembly, it binds the Executive. The Assembly can vary what is in the budget policy statement. It now binds the Executive, and the Executive proposal can only be done within that requirement. If the Assembly feels like introducing anything into the budget, then, the Assembly, then they must consult the Minister for Finance in terms of the implication of the proposal to amend anything in the budget that has now come from the Executive, just to go to the Minister of Finance. That's when you look at the Constitution, it requires that where a proposal or an amendment is going to affect what the ministry has proposed, it now has been consultation with the Minister of Finance, who has the power also to say that you cannot do because these are the implications. So the powers are really balanced. That you are given the power to set the ceiling on the proposal you receive. Then the executive has a free hand to now work within that ceiling to achieve the budget they want. And should assembly want an amendment in that budget now, it must be with the concurrence of the executive. They cannot just wake up and say we are adding this, and that. No.
So, Governor, you had raised that as a challenge earlier, yes, that the Assembly sometimes puts unrealistic revenue targets. And as explained by Senator Mtata, I think you are restricted to operate within the BPS, which is national, and the CFSP. I think at the county, it's a county fiscal strategy paper.
Yeah.
So how would the Assembly then raise revenues or raise budgets in a way that, you end up with deficits? That's one. Number two is, if the year is coming to a close like now, and you realize you are only at 83% of your revenue, are you required to do a supplementary to revise your budgets downwards? Because you have only seen supplementaries to revise upwards and rarely to revise downwards.
I think that is correct, what you have just said. The only problem that we have, in addition to what the Senator has said, on the issue of on-source revenue, when you really vary it so much, because even in the county physical strategy paper, you normally provide how you are going to do some of these things. Now, if it goes to the Assembly and there are no restrictions at all or any provision to lay a basis on why you think that you will not collect 300 million, you are going to collect 1 billion. Now, immediately you throw in such a figure without any consideration because there are no ceilings. If you look at the other normal budget, you'll be removing something from here, putting here. But here you are introducing a completely, it's a carte blanche, it's a free thing. You're just introducing a figure, and then you start now allocating to projects this figure that you have just introduced without referring to how that figure was arrived at. How are we going to raise this money? What will be the source?
But remember, the CFSP came from the executive.
Yes.
And it has revenue projection.
Yes.
So do you think the Assembly can alter those revenue
No, but I'm saying when it comes to budget, like in Busia now, realistic, because you are not showing us where we are going to do it. And I've had opportunity, to engage even with the former budget people there then. But the whole idea would be to say, just put a figure. We will know what to do. And that's why you'll say then you'll move from maybe 10, 15 million on ward projects, you say put 25 million. But in reality, it is not realized. Now, the biggest challenge, Chair, is that if you have got ceilings on all these other things and justification, where do you just come in towards the tail end of the budget and say you introduce 900 million or 1 billion, the way you are putting it, without any basis, and it finds its way into the budget? Now, there is no correlation even between what you have said and what the executive has said, because it must be some project-based what is going to be done. Now, when the governor writes, from what I saw here, he writes to the Assembly to say, this thing is very unrealistic, we may not be able to do this. But the thing just went ahead. I don't know whether they managed to raise the 2/3 to be able to push it. But there's no ceiling on this on-source revenue. That's where the problem was. And that's why I have been having a problem also with the control of budget, to say now, you are telling us pay this. But when you are approving this budget, why couldn't you also have asked, you have changed this figure by almost 800, 900 million shillings. How are you going to raise it from 200? You just approved the budget, and now we're in the process of all these deficits. Where do we get this money? You have put it here that in real sense, in real accounting issue, there should be no issues of pending bills because we are running a program-based budget. That money must have been budgeted somewhere. But the reality, how do we end up in these kind of situations?
Control of budget. What is the revenue, on-source revenue potential for Busia County?
Thank you, Chair. For the last financial year, we noted under collection by 34%. It was at 64 because the target was 300 million and the collection was 200. Now, at the onset of the budget implementation, we normally review the budget planning documents to ensure that the budget is aligned to the program-based. We insist on the program-based budgeting. And if that is strictly followed, all these other things cannot occur in the pending bills. Yeah, so with the other issue was on the recurrent absorption. That one has no problem. It has 95%. And then there's another problem of low expenditure on development. Development is also an issue which now, boils down to the collection of the revenue. So the automation that was done did not realize the revenue that is expected from Busia, like in terms of parking, considering it's a border county, so we expect more in terms of revenue collection. So, but advisories are usually issued on the planning documents at the onset of the financial year to align to program-based to avoid all these other problems. Thank you, Chair.
Governor, sasa tuambiane ukweli. There is no way Homa Bay can collect more on-source revenue than Busia. And you know that. Because we don't have the advantages that Busia has, the borders and robust business activity. Homa Bay, we are just fishermen and border operators. And yet, that 200 million, that's what you collected last year. Was that CPA, Kendi? 200 million was for last year?
Yeah, last financial year, that's June 2023.
You did 200 million?
No, that is minus A&D appropriation in aid.
So, what was the total amount?
370.
370. Even 370 is still too little. And you know what your companion in Homa Bay did is just to have these regular revenue roundtables, putting everybody on toes, holding everyone accountable, and on-source revenue has increased. It's only that the officers are now murmuring that they are too broke, because initially they used to collect and retain. So I think what Busia is generating, perhaps this 900 million that was budgeted initially is what you should be collecting, not the 300 million that you're budgeting. But I think this conversation really was more of to explore what can be done better. Maybe let me hear from Senator Mtata, then we come back to you and we make some progress.
I just want to address the concern His Excellency has, that the County Assembly is able to override him in the final budget. Because even the National Assembly, if you look at Article 114, Clause 2 of the Constitution, the Speaker must make, if a motion is brought, the Speaker must make a decision whether it affects the money bill, that's the Appropriation Act. If it does, it can only be proceeded with in accordance with the recommendation of the Finance Minister. The Parliament cannot just wake up and say, the executive has brought this, or you are therefore going to expand it the way we want. There is that check, because it's the executive who owns the budget at the end of the day, who implements the budget, and who is accountable for the budget. So what is if that's what is happening in Busia, then it's extremely wrong. And the Speaker should be able to rein in the Assembly and demand that whenever they bring a proposal that has implications on the budget, that proposal must go to the Department of Defense, Ministry of 35. We say, okay, where can you? You cannot do a budget like that. So you must really put down your foot and demand that there's compliance with that requirement, that the Minister for Finance.
Chairman, your closing remarks then on that, then OAG, then we come to the Governor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to know that I know the County Assembly has adversely been mentioned on this particular matter. But I want to confirm to the committee that the County Assembly does not prepare budget. and the budget making process is a cycle. The county fiscal strategy paper sets ceilings where the executives will prioritize areas. So the matter that we are dispensing now was a matter before we came to the county assembly. And I think my friend governor is trying probably to play himself, because this offense was committed by his predecessor. And if there's that concurrence in the budget making process, then the GAABU has been done in conformity with the realistic figures, which we have insisted as a county assembly, that the data that is provided by the Department of Economic Planning should be realistic. And areas where we are underperforming, Chair, as an assembly, we've tasked the executive to go and pull the socks up. The revenue, the source revenue that we're collecting is far below. So we cannot still hang where at the bottom. But I think the measures the government is able to mention that have been put in place to lift this selling or this revenue, source revenue to a higher level is good. So they are just encouraged that we can do better than what we're doing now. But importantly, Chair, and I believe the Senate is going to support this, that there's need to support the members of county assembly in implementing their manifesto at the local level. That is important, but I think there's been a pronouncement that the bill has been drafted. So I think when it comes forward, it will give us a good working environment with the governor. Because the governor can decide to place the members of county assembly and say, it's okay, let's have this. But at the end of the day, how is service delivery at the ward level? How is the service delivery at the county level? So I want to confirm, Chair, that we are supporting the governor. The supplementary budgets in able to bring the county assembly, we have unanimously supported. And I think he needs to ride on that goodwill so that we're able to improve on the gaps that are there. This anomaly occurred before he came to office, and we're saying we're not repeating. So maybe our senator, with due respect, we are following the law to the letter and support the development initiatives in the county government of Busia. Thank you.
Thank you. You spoke on behalf of the entire assembly rather than the Public Accounts Committee. But OAG, then we get the governor so that we close this and move to another matter.
Just three quick ones, Chair. Just the way the national government operates. The owners of preparing the budget is the county executive. And it's their figures, and they should be able to defend the figures. Remember, you are not just posting figures, Chair. You must have workings, justification, and the bottom line here, Chair, is based on past experience. If last year, Chair, you are able to collect your own source revenue, 293, there is no miracle that you can collect 900. That's the first thing. The other thing is about supplementary, Chair, that as you also do your supplementary, because you have a budget monitoring team, it can be able to guide you in every quarter whether you are also hitting your targets. And if you are not hitting your targets, there are two things which need to take place. One, you can also revise your revenue targets downward, and again, review your expenditure, because what has been the practice is that they review the revenue targets without reviewing the expenditure, because it's a budget, it's a balanced budget. Since you are not attaining your revenue targets, even if it's by 300 million, then you have also to bring down an expenditure of 300 through specific expenditure items so that you have a balanced budget. That's what I wanted to say, Chair.
As I bring it back to the governor, because we had deliberated on this issue during our brief in the morning, we took the decision that now counties are preparing receipt of revenue statements. They are audited and they've been laid before the Senate. We will have to use the advice of the control of budget and pick the 10 counties with serious issues when it comes to on-source revenue. And I think the control of budget had flagged Busia as one of those counties. So we must have a separate conversation on the receipt of revenue statements, because that will deal with questions around on-source revenue, It will also deal with questions around automation, because we are also trying to establish whether there is a proportional relationship between automation and enhanced collection. And our view so far, there seems to be very little impact that automation has. It's really more about processes and people than the information system that is put in place. So there's a significant finding here on parking fees, and I think there are issues around the contract and award of new system. We will deal with those questions when we query the receiver of revenue statements. I don't know whether the receiver of revenue for Busia is present. Who is the designated receiver of revenue? Who prepared the receiver of revenue statements?
There is somebody who was actually legally assigned for that role.
Yeah, because the law says shall be designated in writing.
No.
Those are collectors, not receiver. The receiver is only one. There is only one receiver of revenue in a county government.
If you use commercial bank language, it means that there's somebody who receives that money and banks it for the central bank account.
So who's the designated receiver of revenue?
Chief Officer.
Chief Officer?
Finance.
Can Chief Officer Finance confirm that the receiver of revenue statements have been prepared? Yes, be on record?
I want to confirm that we prepared them. They are ready.
Because the reason why we can't make sense with these financial statements is that the note explaining on-source revenue is not there. Auditor General, do we have the note explaining on-source revenue in this financial statement?
It is not there, Chair.
It is not there.
And it's a requirement to disclose that in the statements.
So we can't even see the breakdown of what is coming from parking, what is coming from market, from hospitals. We don't have that visibility unless we look at the receiver of revenue statements. So I think we'll defer the questions around on-source revenue, the automation strategies, and then we'll have a separate conversation along those lines. But that disclosure ought to have been here. So, Governor, with that directive in mind, that we shall defer some of the questions on OSR, on automation, and on disclosure of your streams. Maybe you make your closing comments on that matter, then we move to the next issue.
Chair, thank you. Chair, thank you. We are well guided that Busia has got a very high potential if we put proper systems and in place, in addition to also poverty eradication activities that we are doing, making sure that the population is also engaged in economic activities through our ward-based economic revitalization programs. We believe they will be able to contribute to all this that we have talked about. I also agree that just automation alone is not enough. We have seen, and you have given it, our sister counties, Embu, Homa Bay, and I remember a statement by you, Chair, during the Homa Bay Investment Conference, that devolution is a good thing, but with the time there will be counties that will be like Dubai, and there will be counties that may not exist. I hope Busia will not be among those ones that will not exist. Busia should be among those ones that are going to be like Dubai. We want to turn it into a logistics hub, and that basically then means we must look at all those areas. We have already done our FIF bill. We believe that is going to improve our health delivery systems, because I'm aware that some of the counties you have mentioned, nearly 50% of the improvements also came from health sector. So it has got a ripple effect. You are giving good services and you're also getting some revenue from the ones that we have checked. Secondly, the issue of valuation roles, just to know what is it that you have got potential to do. It has taken a little bit longer in our area, but we're almost there in terms of doing that. On what they have said about strategically being again a border point, we have had challenges, just like you are discussing issues of land, on providing a service. because you can't charge trucks that are just on the highway. What service are you giving them? So we are also trying to come up with those services that we can offer. And again, it will not only be making sure that we get revenue, it also has got a ripple effect on the economy through the service industries that are able to serve some of these people. So we will be looking forward. I want us to be on that watch list of the next 10 counties that have been picked. And I still go with your statement that when the time comes, Busia will be one of those counties.
Great. Senator Onyonka? Yeah.
Governor Otuoma, I've known you for a long time. Our team, we are user-friendly. We notice that our decisions are not going to be implemented if we pick an adversarial approach to this. We are actually accepting and deciding that we are going to pick up the advisorial approach to the issues. I really do hope that by the time we get to next year, these issues, because of your name, your integrity, the sort of people that you have, I would want to have a better thing here. And we understand that. I would never blame you. But you keep defending your predecessors. I understand, because of the local politics. But sometimes you just need to move on. Move on. Leave the guy alone. He's done. Just move on. Thank you. I think that will make it easy for your team to make decisions openly so that we can change things the way they are.
Okay, so in our earlier brief, we picked budgetary control as a significant issue, and on source revenue, we will do a separate conversation looking at the receiver of revenue statements. So that will take care of irregular non-collection of parking fees. We will take the written responses. The other issue that the Auditor General cited was the irregular acquisition of firefighting engine. You said this is partial. For the sake of time, just what is still outstanding?
Chair, what the other issues we have confirmed, the only issue that we flagged was that the engine was imported in the name of the supplier and not in the name of the county government.
Was it an old unit or it was a new unit?
We realized.
You confirmed it was new?
Yes, it was new, Chair.
So the supplier imported in their name?
Yes, and then later transferred to the county government.
Okay.
But ideally, it should have been the other way around. The supplier should have imported in the name of the county government. This is what makes the county government now look like second owner, not first owner, Chair.
So county government is a second owner?
Yes, Chair.
But it is not so does that make it a second-hand car? Because second-hand is...
Chair, to add is that though it was the go-between did it in his name, but it was initially, he was doing it on behalf of the county. Because when we verified the odometer, it had only moved 900 kilometers, which is the distance from Mombasa to Busia, which was a third-party confirmation, because that also confirmed that it was not a second hand. It was just that he did then transfer.
But there's a other question you had raised, that the engine cost 52 million, and you have said that an online search revealed that the cost of a new firefighting engine is between 15 million and 20 million. Now, do you still stand by that?
We don't stand by that, Chair, because I think when we were doing that, what you search and get online is minus specifications. And it also depends on whether it is a water engine or foam engine, and the specifications of fighting fire. So I think the mistake was on our side, Chair. We should have gone further to ascertain whether the figure we were talking of 15 to 20 includes all specifications, Chair.
Senator Gatai?
Chair, I wanted to raise some concerns. Now, what was also the official procedure of bringing the machine? Was it the county which is supposed to import, or to import through a supplier, a contractor for that matter? I'm raising this issue through the OAG.
It is.
So who is now the actual owner of the machine? Is it the supplier or the county government?
The actual owner, chair, is the county government. And what we had raised is, yes, they did through a supplier, but the anomaly was that supplier should have imported it in the name of, initial name of the county government. So that is where the anomaly came in. But the actual owner now is the county government, and the engine was new because the kilometers were 900 and something, which we estimate to be the distance between Mombasa and Busia. Yeah.
There is an index of prices, I think released by, is it Treasury or PP, Public Procurement?
It's public procurement.
Is a fire engine part of those items that are indexed?
What we later on realize is that there is a fire engine minus other accessories.
But is it indexed? Or the index only captures
No, it is not indexed under that.
Common items?
Yeah.
Governor, is it your conviction that there was value for money in the 52 million expenditure?
Chair, if I look at the contract agreements that I was given or that I came across in terms of what other government entities have been